From the TV studios of West Hartford, Connecticut, it's the Weehaw.com Eclipse Special, starring Ronnie Newton and John Lyons. Here's your host, John Lyons.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Welcome to the Weehaw.com Roundtable. I'm John Lyons, as always, joined by the managing editor of Weehaw.com, Ronnie Newton. I have an introductory script here, but I'm wearing Eclipse glasses, so I can't see anything. So we did something special. We had one of the staff here do our introduction. I wrote it. I thought it was great. Just my humble opinion.
A little corny, John.
A little corny, but you know what? You got to go with it. We're wearing glasses. I couldn't see what I was doing. So we are really, really excited about today's show. As probably everybody knows, Connecticut's going to be experiencing its first eclipse of the sun in 7 years. And its nearest proximity to total darkness, in other words, Connecticut's nearest proximity to total darkness since 1925. That year, a good portion of the state saw a total eclipse. For most of us, what is happening Monday will be the biggest eclipse event in Connecticut in our lifetimes. So it's a pretty big deal. 1970 was another near miss for Connecticut, with eastern portions of the state seeing near totality and parts of Massachusetts seeing a total eclipse. However, the band of totality, which was much more narrow that year. On a personal note, I remember this one and recall being told that 2024 would be the next big one, and remembering that 2024 seemed like forever. I was 6 years old. Most of us likely won't see another in our lifetime. The next total eclipse in our area is going to happen in 2079. Sadly, I don't think that Ronnie and I will be doing a show a few days ahead of that one. We do welcome two experts today. From our own Sedgwick Middle School is Ted Gerner, who teaches about eclipse events as part of the curriculum there, and Dr. Jennifer Raska, who is an eye specialist from Sight Eye Care here in West Hartford. Guys, gals, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
We're very excited.
Can we take our glasses off?
Yeah,
because I have no idea what I'm looking at.
So
much better.
You can still, Ronnie ordered them yesterday. You can still order your glasses on Amazon. Order them. I don't know if you have it. Can you read that? Whatever.
Oh, they're ISO certified, and they conform and meet the transmission requirements of 12312-2 filters for direct observation of the sun. And there's a whole bunch of other requirements that they meet, but they were, I don't know, 6 for $10 or something on Amazon Prime, and I got them within a day.
And someone was paid to come up with that ISO designation. Probably somebody in the government. So.
Yeah, probably.
So, I'm not sure where, but anyway. So we're really excited. We have a lot to cover. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the weather for Monday. Good news for us, bad news for a lot of the rest of the country. The forecast is pretty good. Hopefully it holds. It can change. April can be very tricky with the weather. Then I'm going to talk really quickly about the 1925 event and the 1970 event. We actually have maps of those two eclipse tracks. We're going to show you those, and then we're going to go to Ted Gerner, who's going to talk a little bit about the science. Is that the right term?
Sure, the mechanics, the science of an eclipse, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I never know quite what language to use, and I never know quite who is a specialist, a meteorologist, an astronomer.
I guess technically it's astronomy.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll talk about it at an 8th grade level,
which is
the mechanics of the eclipse, why it happens.
When you get to 5th grade, I'll understand what you're talking about. So anyway, so let's first bring up the map of the forecast for next Monday. You see the map. Hopefully you can see it well on TV. So I always worry this time of year about upper level lows. In April and May, the sun is really, really, really intense. If you went outside on a clear day and it's freezing in April and laid outside, you'd sunburn badly pretty quickly, because the sun's very, very intense. It's only about 60 days away from its zenith in the sky. So what happens is, when you get a low pressure system that has any sort of proximity to our area, the sun creates tremendous instability in the atmosphere. So even if it's a beautiful day out in the morning, clouds billow up throughout the day. People think the day is going to be ruined. You might even get a shower, a thunder shower, sometimes even hail. And then by the end of the day, it's gorgeous. So if you look at the map, you see that low pressure system off of the eastern coast of Canada in the North Atlantic. Right now, the maps are showing that that's a low. That's what we have to worry about. It's far enough east that I don't think we're going to have any cloud impact on the backside rotation from that. Hopefully the map holds. I'll be posting on Neighbors and Friends here in a couple of days. I'll put up an updated map as we get closer and talk about it. But right now the forecast looks really, really good. So cross fingers. We're lucky. Rest of the country, it's not looking so good. You can do your own research on that. But Texas, Oklahoma, all the way up almost to Indiana, the forecast is not looking good. But then east of Indiana, it's looking good. So,
Hey, John, this is a stupid question. What time of day is the eclipse?
there are no stupid questions. It is.
Begins at 2:13.
Thank you. Yeah, speak,
It
please.
begins at 2:13, peaking at 3:27 here in Connecticut.
Okay.
13. Okay,
To
thank you.
3:27. See, one of us did our homework.
Right. Peaking at 3:27, then it finally ends at 4:15, I believe.
Okay, 4:15. And we're going to spend a ton of time talking about safety. So I'm really concerned about safety on this one. I can't say where it happened, but Ronnie just had what I'll call a horrifying interaction with some folks.
I just was speaking with some really smart people who said, oh, I thought we didn't have to worry about looking at the sun because we're not in the total eclipse area. So that's something that we definitely should address regarding using these kind of glasses if you're going to be wanting to see the
So
eclipse.
Dr. Raska, we're going to pick your brain on that later because
Very good.
that shook me up. So I mean, I learned. Let's do this. Let's go right first. Let's go to the map of the 1925 event. So this is the track of the eclipse, and it's really wild depending on where the Earth is. If you look at maps of various solar eclipse events, it's really crazy some of the paths these things take. And if you can look there toward the center left, you can see it tracked right over Connecticut. Just about all of Connecticut was in total darkness for anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. It was really a great astronomical event. Correct me if I use incorrect words here.
Astronomical, yes.
Yeah, so it was really, really celestial. Probably not celestial, probably astronomical. but
Either
anyway.
or, yeah.
All right.
Astronomical. I'd go with astronomical.
Okay,
All right.
we'll go with that. Now let's take a look at the 1970 map, which I have memories of as a child. I was 5 or 6 years old, and if you look, the path was a little more narrow. So people will say, well, if it was totally dark in Boston, how come Connecticut didn't have more coverage, more of the sun obscured than they do with this one? And it really had to do with a lot of things that I don't understand, and maybe I don't know if you can explain it, but if you look at all the maps, you'll see the paths narrow and widen depending on where and when.
Oh, that would be due to the distance from the Earth that the moon is. The moon varies in its distance from the Earth. And so sometimes when it's closer, the path would be wider because the shadow would be projected wider onto the surface of the Earth.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was 1970. Bring that back up real quick. This was 1970. And I remember being told by my parents that the next one this good is going to be in 2024. And I just remember thinking, wow, like it's
Here we are.
literally a lifetime away. So just one of my earliest
So
childhood
John,
memories.
what did you do then? Did you look at the sun?
I remember standing out on the driveway and looking at, I think we were looking at it on wax paper.
I
was my
think I did something
recollection.
like that as well because I was also alive back then and old enough to I kind of remember it, but I do remember my parents saying, don't look up at the sun or you'll go blind.
Yeah, and it's really funny. That seems to be the one consistent message, no matter how far back you go, is don't look at the sun. And I guess people don't look at the sun when it's not happening, so it's not something we have to constantly remind people of. So anyway, so that was that. So we have a PowerPoint presentation that Ted Gerner was nice enough to put together for us. He's going to talk us through it. I'm sure all three of us probably will have questions as we go through it. So Ted, the floor is yours.
Sure. If you can put up, there we go. That's a NASA image. You can go on to the next image. But that shows how when the moon eclipses the sun perfectly, you can still see the corona, the outer atmosphere of the sun, giving off its solar flares. So in this slideshow, I'm going to try to cover what causes an eclipse, what it's going to look like from West Hartford, the logistics of where, when, and how to look, and how to do it safely. So basically, just to cover the basics, the Earth, as we know, revolves around the sun. It orbits the sun. And while it's doing that, of course, the moon is orbiting around the Earth. And sometimes the moon is in between the Earth and the sun, and sometimes it's the other way around, and the Earth is in between the sun and the moon. For a solar eclipse, in this particular case, you've got the moon in the middle. And the shadow of the moon is projected onto the Earth. And the shadow is more complex than what we normally see. It actually has two parts. The inner part is called the umbra, and it's the darker part of the shadow, and it's cone-shaped, and it's sort of focused to a point. And that point, where that point lands on Earth, creates a circular shadow that moves across the surface of the Earth. And if you're lucky enough to be in that dark circular shadow, you will see a total eclipse. The other part of the shadow is more flared out, and it's lighter, and that's called the penumbra. And if you're in that part of the shadow, then you'll see a partial eclipse. So West Hartford is going to be in the penumbra when we see the eclipse on April 8th. And that shadow moves across the surface of the Earth because the moon is moving through space around the Earth as the Earth is rotating. So you've got two things in motion. You've got the moon and you've got the Earth rotating. So that is a depiction there of a solar eclipse.
So do you mean that the coverage of the sun is not as dark, or that there's a piece of the sun that's showing?
Right. If you're in the penumbra, there's a piece of the sun that's showing.
Okay.
So it's only partially eclipsed, so some light gets through, but not 100% of it. So it's a lighter shadow.
So how dark will it get here in West Hartford?
That is a good question. The last total eclipse I was in, it did not get pitch black. I was in West Texas. It was in the 1990s, and it got eerily gray and dark. But I don't remember looking up and seeing stars in the sky. So I think it depends. I think a lot of it depends on the cloud cover. Sometimes I've heard that it gets really black except along all the horizons, 360 degrees. It might look like a sunset in the horizon. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to this. Like you, I've been looking forward to this eclipse for 20 years. So we'll have to see.
I remember there was a partial eclipse for Connecticut I should have looked it up for the show, but I think it was 1994-ish, 1995, somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. And I recall looking out the window of my office. I worked for a corporation back then, and thinking, wow, why is it so dark? Are we getting a thunderstorm? That's what it looked like. But it was a beautiful, clear, dry, I want to say July day. And it just looked like, how things start to darken when the thunderclouds are approaching, but they're not over you yet. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, it was the eclipse.
Yeah, so I think what happens is that the sunlight still hits parts of the Earth's atmosphere, and the light is scattered throughout the atmosphere. So what we're going to probably see is not complete nighttime darkness, but a more diffuse
eerie,
kind of,
an eerie darkness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Next slide.
The next slide shows a lunar eclipse, just so that people don't get confused. The difference is now we have the Earth in the middle, and the shadow of the Earth is projected onto the moon. And you still have the umbra, which is the dark, conical middle part of the shadow. And then you have the penumbra. So that explains why we sometimes have a total lunar eclipse or a partial lunar eclipse. Same phenomenon, you just have two different celestial bodies projecting the shadows.
Tough question. Why are total lunar eclipses so much more common than solar eclipses?
So, the moon
You promised no tough questions.
I did. I said no gotcha questions. I promised my guests. I guess I might be in trouble here.
I think it has to do, I'm going out on a limb here.
Yeah.
I'm not an astronomer, but I think the Earth relative to the moon, the Earth being bigger to the moon, projects a bigger shadow.
That makes sense.
And so there's a higher probability that the little moon is going to move through the big shadow of the Earth, as opposed to the other way around, where the Earth moves through the shadow of the moon. I'm just kind of going out on a limb here.
Right or wrong, that makes a lot of sense. So we're good. Okay, next slide, please.
So this just talks about the umbra versus the penumbra, and West Hartford will be in the penumbra. And if you go, an hour and a half north, an hour north into upstate Vermont, upstate New York, you can be in the umbra and see a total lunar.
Now the farther, the umbra is, let's just say, maybe 150-mile swath for this, roughly. I'm just roughing. Mm-hmm. And if you're the farther out of the swath you are from the center, the shorter the duration, I would think, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So ideally, if you want the longest duration, you want to be right in the midline.
Burlington, baby.
Right in the center. Burlington, Vermont, Lake Placid, New York, right in the center, and you'll have the longest duration eclipse, which is 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's, I've got to remember before we wrap up today, so many people are talking about driving. to Burlington where they don't have hotel accommodations, nothing. And, basically imagine 10, 20, 30 million people leaving one area at one time. The moment it's over. And I know they're very worried about traffic and very worried about traffic accidents, fatalities, things like that.
Right.
So, but anyway, we can touch on it later. Next slide, please.
Total solar versus a partial solar all has to do with what part of the shadow you happen to be in on the surface of the Earth when that shadow moves across. So if you're in the umbra, you'll see a total. If you're right in the middle of the umbra, you'll see a longer total eclipse. And if you're in the penumbra, then you will see a partial. And that shadow, by the way, is moving quickly across the surface of the Earth from anywhere from 2,000 miles an hour to 4,000 miles an hour. It varies depending on what part of the Earth it's hitting. And that's because the moon is moving through space, going around the Earth. And therefore its shadow is moving. So yeah. Next slide. Just a little bit more information on the partial. So if you're in that penumbra and you look up from the vantage point of an observer on the Earth, then you would see a sliver of the sun. So we'll have a 92% eclipse here in West Hartford. So you'll see 8% of the sun, like a crescent sun.
And it's funny because I went on one of the interactive maps, and you can Google search, there's a lot of interactive maps. And literally just 50, 75 miles north of us, it's 95%. And 50, 75 miles north of that, it's 98%. So it's really incredible. And as you go south, it's the opposite. But even as far as Florida and the southeast, they're going to see a little bit of effects
I think
from
almost everyone in North America or the United States is going to see some kind of a partial eclipse.
Yeah, Hawaii and Alaska, they're saying, are the only two.
Really?
I think they said that's. I'm trying to remember how they said.
92% is still a lot.
That is a lot.
I mean,
It's
So I guess we were talking about this beforehand. In August of 2017, there was an eclipse. I was at the beach off the coast of Massachusetts, and it was, I think you said about 65%.
I just don't remember. I've researched so many eclipses.
It was a crescent, probably more like a fingernail. I think they called it, like a thumbnail, and it got eerily dark, and it was noon or 1 o'clock. It was really the middle of the day, but it was a clear, beautiful, cloudless day, and it was definitely a freaky experience.
Yeah, it's still going to be something to behold.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that we see some of the animal phenomenon that we hear about. The birds either start or stop singing. The crickets might start chirping. Dogs might start barking. Who knows?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll pay attention.
I don't know if that's an urban myth, but I'm looking forward. I'm going to keep my ears open as well as my eyes.
Are you far enough off the highway and where you're going to be?
In Lake Placid.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Next slide, please.
Okay, so our view, we went over this basically. Our view from West Hartford will be a partial, because we're not in what's called the path of totality. As that umbra moves across the surface, that is known as the path of totality. And we'll be just outside of that, so we're going to see a partial starting at 2:15, peaking at 3:27, and then finally the moon will move off at 4:35. And there we have a graphic from a website called the Great American Eclipse website, which I highly recommend because they have an amazing animation of a flyover. If you can imagine being in a satellite or a spacecraft, following along as the shadow of the penumbra moves across North America from Mexico all the way up, and it shows every city that the penumbra is going to go across. It's an amazing little animation. I highly recommend that website. And that's just a closer view of the Northeast, and you can see that upstate New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, parts of Maine are going to be in that path of totality. So that will be more or less the view during a total eclipse. The face of the sun will be completely obscured, which allows us to see the corona, the atmosphere of the sun, and hopefully some solar flares that emanate from the sun. If you have a good camera, you might be able to capture some images of solar flares during that 3-minute period. Now, of course, never observe the sun, never look directly at the sun, either during an eclipse or normally. But people, I think, tend to want to take off the glasses during an eclipse. They think, oh, it's only a sliver of the sun, but it's never safe. except if you're in the zone of totality, and only during that period of time during totality, that's the only time that it's safe to take off the eclipse glasses. And even then, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to keep them on.
I saw one report, and shame on me, I should have written it down, but where they say, millions of people could suffer some level of eye damage through this event. And that just the level of caution that has to be taken is extreme. We're going to get to you on that, so
Very good.
I promise. So anyway, next slide.
Sure. It pays to do your homework in advance. On the next slide, we're going to see a website where you can input any location on the face of the Earth, and it'll show you what the view is going to be like, how much of the sun will be eclipsed, in what direction to look. So you want to think about this ahead of time so you'll know, okay, where do I want to be standing and in what direction do I want to be looking? Because you don't want to be scrambling at the last minute because there's trees in your way or buildings in your way. You want to be in a safe location. Obviously, the safest place would be an open field. You don't want to be on a rooftop or near a cliff or in the middle of a street, for God's sakes. Open field. And then, of course, using approved eclipse glasses or a pinhole viewer are the safest way to directly observe the eclipse. And that is just a link to that website where you can input any point on Earth, and it gives you more information than you can possibly imagine. It'll show you what the sun is going to look like, in what direction to look. I highly recommend that site. And there it is. There's just a picture of it. It shows the path of totality. It's an interactive map. You can take that and you can zoom in anywhere in that path. Or you can type in the name of the city that you're going to be in up there in that upper corner. You can type in the name, hit enter, or hit simulator, I believe it is. I can't see it from here. And it'll bring you to a little animation that shows what it's going to look like from the ground. Maybe the link, there you go, hit I agree. All right, good. So with this, there's a little slider bar at the bottom where you can slide and change the time of day. And that bright spot in the middle represents the sun, and it shows how the sun's going to move during the course of the day.
Wow.
It
even
cool.
dims. Yeah, the
Yeah.
sky dims. It shows you how much will be eclipsed. It shows you what direction. So for West Hartford, you want to be looking to the southwest at about 45 degrees above the horizon. And there's more information in there. It's really neat. You can really dive in deeply there.
So I'm going to ask our production team, could we attach this to the YouTube channel, please, so folks can click on this and check it out. I'm getting a thumbs up from the production room. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. And is this the last slide?
Close.
We'll find out.
I believe
Let's
so.
go. There we go.
Oh, and I've
there
already
you go.
gone over this. This is just specifics for West Hartford. When it starts, the percent coverage. We can go to the next slide. That's just a graphic on eclipse glasses. Not my field of expertise, but there's the ISO code number to check and make sure they're verified. You can buy them in person locally. I checked today. They still have them at the Lowe's on the Berlin Turnpike and at the Big Y here in Bishop's Corner, or Amazon, of course. And if you don't have eclipse glasses, another safe way to view the eclipse is with a pinhole viewer. And there's a link in there on the next slide as to how to make one. They're pretty simple. You just take a box, you cut a hole out of one end, and we actually cut 2 holes in one end. You put aluminum foil over one of the holes. You poke a tiny hole in the foil, and as the light comes in from the eclipse, it goes through that pinhole and it's projected onto the inside of the box. So when you're using one of these, you're not even looking towards the sun. You're actually facing away from the sun, looking into a box. And what you're going to see is the light coming from the eclipse being projected inside the box. So very, very safe way to observe the eclipse. So all kinds of videos on YouTube about how to make these. Great project for kids.
And there it is. Connecticut will be in the total path of totality in 2079. So everyone
2079.
hang
If you
in.
do the math, that's 55 years from now. So some of my students will still be around.
So I'm going to ask our production team to please reserve the studio for that tape. Okay, so we'll make sure we're good there.
Right.
I
So
think this building will have like sunk into,
exactly, yeah, we're all going to be underwater here, I think, by then. So anyway, but Ted, thank you. Really, tremendous presentation. Really,
you.
really interesting.
Thanks for having me in.
Yeah, it's great to have you stick around because I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about here, but
I will.
Dr. Raska from Sight, which is right across the street. Full disclosure, I am a patient of hers. She checks my eyes every year. So far, I can still see my hand in front of that face, so something's working out. So I want to dive in, and I know Ted covered it a little bit, but let's dive into the safety issue. Let's talk about eye. Can you talk about the technology, the medical, the science behind the eye, and what the risks are here?
Yeah, of course. We want to protect the retina. So the retina is the tissue that directly lines the back of the eye. It's a direct extension of the brain, and its job is to take information from our environment, our visual world, send it back to the brain for interpretation. When you look directly at the sun, like people do during the eclipse, the concern is that the sun is about 1,000 times stronger than a 100-watt light bulb, like one you would have in your home. And it's the thermal heat that can damage the tiny cells in your retina. And when it does, it creates a scar, and that scar would go on to create a permanent blind spot in your central vision. So even a couple minutes of viewing the eclipse or looking at the sun without the proper protection can cause permanent damage.
So, never ask a question you don't know the answer to, but I'm going to ask the question. Wouldn't my eye tell me? Wouldn't I feel pain in my eyes saying, hey, something's wrong here?
Yeah, great question. There's no pain receptors in the back of the retina. It really just communicates with visual light. So you would not know that you were incurring damage at the time that it was happening. And some people don't even have visual symptoms until 24 or 48 hours afterwards. So it really is important. Even if you think you're tolerating it well, don't risk it.
It's really scary because kids, especially if I were outside alone, didn't know any better, and I suddenly saw it getting dark, first thing I would do is look up at the sky. Where are the clouds coming from? What's going on? Oh wait, what's going on here? So that's what's so scary for me. So I think, what's your message to parents? Keep an eye on the young kids. You have young children. Talk a little. What will you be doing with your kids?
I love Ted's recommendation. Make a project out of it. I think that the pinhole viewers are a great way for children to get involved and to appreciate it. And then you don't have to worry as much as a parent. We have enough worry. So make a project and keep it fun.
Is it more dangerous to look at the sun during an eclipse than it would be to look up at the sun, in the middle of the day? Or is it just that your eyes, you might think that you can look at the sun for longer because it's not as bright, even though it really is doing just as much damage?
It's only safe to look during a total eclipse if you're in that path of totality. Outside of that, even if it's partially eclipsed, it's not safe. And no different than if it was 2 o'clock on a regular day without an eclipse.
Okay.
And to be clear, the damage can happen in seconds.
Yes.
Basically instantly. Okay, I want to make sure we convey that. What about pets? Do we have to worry about our pets?
That's a great question. Some animals do have a reflective tapetum, which is a different lining in front of their retina than we have. I would have to do some literature search to know for sure.
Right.
I can't speak to the safety of the retina.
Well, I will tell you what.
Hopefully they know.
Yeah, I know. Well,
they're
I don't
smart
think
enough.
I don't think Leo or Millie is looking at the sun.
Millie has fur over her eyes, so she can't see anyway.
Yeah, so, oh goodness, I think that's what we all need next Monday. But
I'll put some ISO glasses on my pup.
so all right.
Awesome.
So another worry I have. This is the first major eclipse event, solar eclipse event that Connecticut's going to be experiencing in the smartphone era. I brought my smartphone as a prop, and I could see, okay, I'm just going to put the camera on and reverse it, and I'll just do it this way. Tell me why
just
that's
as
a
dangerous. So you would need a filter for your camera, as well as a filter for your eyes to be able to capture it safely if you're looking right at the image.
Can you do this? Because this is what I did in 2017. Can you put glasses over the lens of your phone and take a picture that way?
I believe so. So
Yeah.
the literature I read said that glasses on the camera itself and then glasses on you if you were looking at it. That might be overcautious, but I think the concern is that the light energy could damage the filter in your camera.
But it would be okay if you had the glasses over it.
Correct.
If I'm wearing the glasses
Yes.
and I put my phone on reverse, almost like I was taking a selfie, is the camera capable of taking a picture, or will it damage the camera? Is it too bright for the camera?
I believe it's too bright for the camera.
Okay, so you won't capture it.
Yeah.
So don't try.
You can take a selfie of yourself wearing the glasses.
Yes.
With the
there'll be plenty of those. I
Yeah.
think knowing social media, I'm sure we're going to see more of those than we carry. So it's interesting, and unless you have sophisticated camera equipment that's designed for it, so.
Even a welder's mask is not strong enough, so you need.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So these little cardboard things are stronger than a welder's mask. I put these on this morning at the house. I couldn't
kidding.
see anything. I looked outside at the sky. I looked at bright lights. I couldn't see anything. Here in studio, we can barely see. We've got really bright lights to illuminate us. We can barely see the lights.
It's a great
just
test of
remarkable.
authenticity if
Yeah.
you do get some ISO glasses.
I was nervous when I saw they were cardboard, but they actually seemed to work. So, which made me feel better. So, Ronnie, what are the questions you have for our guests?
I don't know. I think I've been asking kind of questions all along. So I guess the question about pets, young children. What about really really young children who are too young to put glasses on? Will they be automatically like? Would they like we have a baby grandchild? He's 8 months old. Would he on his own think to look up at the sun? Obviously you can't keep a pair of glasses on him.
Yeah, you definitely just want to avoid grazing at the sun. So if you're looking at it for a long period of time, definitely distract them. I wouldn't leave kids outside unaccompanied on Monday. They may be more inclined to look at the sun because of the phenomenon. Yeah, but I think a lot of kids would probably tolerate glasses better than you might expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is kind of right when elementary schools dismiss at 3:20. So kind of right.
But
during-
there's no school next week, right?
Correct.
Oh,
April
right.
break starts
It's
next week.
spring break. That's right.
lucky.
That's
Yeah.
right.
If it makes you feel better, Ronnie, I didn't know that walking in. The teacher among us told
Okay.
me that. Let me know that.
So it's all on the parents this time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I guess that's better
pressure.
because otherwise
Well,
the kids would be, on their way home
Right,
from
right.
school and it would be less controlled.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of communities are canceling school or doing early dismissal because of this, which makes sense. I mean, I don't know that I'd want my kid on a school bus or walking home from
no.
school during this. If just even
No, the peer
if you're-
pressure of wanting to look up, there's going to be maybe one kid out of 10 who doesn't have solar glasses, and they're going to be wanting to look up like everyone else.
Somebody will
it's-
triple dog dare them, right?
Exactly.
I think I've done it only for a moment, but I think you look and then you remember. It's like just where you just for a second you forget. So it's very scary. So anyway, any other
Yeah,
thoughts?
I'm just
or
going to add that
warnings?
our daycare is taking great precaution. They're not having any outdoor time on Monday, so hopefully a lot of other places that children will be are taking similar precautions.
Hopefully the room faces north, so there's no
Shades pulled.
yeah. Shades pulled face north.
The
so.
long nap time.
yeah, exactly. So anyway,
I have one final observation. I
Yeah.
just think it's really amazing that our moon is exactly the right size and shape to eclipse the sun. Not all moons are like that. So our moon is exactly 400, the diameter of our moon is 400 times smaller than the diameter of the sun, and it's exactly 400 times closer to us than the sun, which allows it to perfectly superimpose on the sun. I wonder that's very rare in our solar system. I know we're the only planet that has a moon that is like that. I don't know how common it is in the universe as a whole, but it's just really interesting. It almost seems planned, it almost
are we
seems,
going to go religion here?
Well-
we're going to do a show on religion.
almost, except for the fact that the moon is moving away from the Earth at about 2 centimeters a year. So in 600 million years, there will be no
we're
total
all in trouble.
eclipse.
We're all in trouble.
There will be
600
no-
million years from now. Hey guys, let's book the studio for 600 million years, please. We're going to have the studio booked up forever. So anyway, really, really interesting show. I'm going to continue to post on Neighbors and Friends over the next few days because clearly people need the education. I say that with peace and love in my heart, but I'm grateful for you guys coming in for part of that process, and we'll keep that process up over here the next 5 days. We'll stay on top of the weather over the next 5 days, and safety. We're going to talk about, and maybe we'll try to find out what the town's doing to prepare as well, and we'll try to get that out through a WeHa article
John.
as well.
Appreciate the invite to come in.
Ted, Jen,
Thanks for
thank you
making
so
me.
much.
Thank you so much.
We're not going to have our guy with the lungs and the voice send us off. I'll just do that. For Ronnie Newton, I'm John Lyons, weha.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you down the road.